Morning, everyone. Hope you are well. A lovely day, and it was beautiful yesterday, wasn't it? And fabulous in the evening. We were able to hear from Arlette Garcia. If you haven't seen it, certainly well worth catching up to hear and to learn about the landscape gardening and all the various plants that we can put in. Very, very interesting. So today's learning is dedicated in memory of Ami Bas Aryeh, Paul Casimir, Yirmiyahu Chir ben Moshe Eliezer, Shlomo Chir ben Moshe Eliezer, Ben Zion ben Yitzchak, Aryeh ben Shimon, Leah bas Faiva, Avram Mordechai ben Moshe Kutner. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened. Okay, so I want to share with you an idea, and I want to ask you a question. And the question is very simple. What is good enough? Huh? What is good enough? How are we meant to show up in life? Right? Nobody expects perfection, but what does it mean to do something good enough? In child psychology, they speak about the idea of the good enough mother. The good enough mother doesn't mean, I think it's in Klein or Winnicott, discuss the idea that it's not that we are looking for perfection, but the mother has to be good enough for the child to be able to provide the support that child would need in the course of the various stages of development of that child, so that the child doesn't feel abandoned or lost and is supported. So the question is, that doesn't stop, because that idea of being good enough is something that really flows throughout the whole of our lives. How much is good enough in life? We tell our kids and our grandchildren, it's enough that you do your best. But we're trying to always do, what is enough, the best that we possibly can. What does that mean? So we mentioned the last time, you may recall, about the Para Aduma. Actually, 2 times ago, I think it was Sunday, we spoke about the Para Aduma, the red heifer, and the idea that it was one of the great mysteries that has baffled the greatest of minds. The idea that it was a paradox. It purified the impure, and it contaminated the pure. So it had a reverse effect, right? Somebody was purifying somebody else. They became impure in the process. And King Solomon, who looked at this conundrum from both ends of the spectrum, wasn't able to solve it. This was a clear sign that the rationale of the Torah, there are aspects that are beyond our comprehension, beyond physical comprehension. And I think that the idea of statutes is a reminder that there are things in life that we cannot understand and are beyond our comprehension, but on the other hand, there are lessons nonetheless to be learned. Let me start speaking in a roundabout way and speak directly to you. So this week's Torah portion has one of the most difficult aspects of the Torah. Moses, of course, is our leader, and Moshe Rabbeinu finds himself once again under pressure from the Jewish people. They're complaining. They don't have water. Okay, Miriam had died, and the well had disappeared, and they're complaining they don't have water. So God tells Moshe to speak to the rock. Right? Kach nes amata, take your staff and speak to the rock. Now, this wasn't the first time that this occurred. This occurred much earlier in Jewish history, and Moshe there actually struck the rock. Here he was told to speak to the rock, but he was told to take his staff. And we know that it was a catastrophe, absolute, complete failure on behalf of Moshe, in that this was considered a sin. Moshe hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. And the question is obvious. The question is obvious. And that is, well, surely by speaking to the rock or even hitting the rock, it is an open miracle. For the people's perspective, they would still see a divine revelation, the divine hand. It would restore their faith in God. The water came through a miracle, right? So therefore, they would be fortified and strengthened in their attitude and their relationship and connection to God. So why is it that Moses was punished? Surely this is good enough. Moshe hitting the rock or speaking to the rock, right, shouldn't make any difference. And at the end of the day, right, Moses had been told to take his staff. If I tell you to take a hammer, right, I'm not expecting you to speak to the nut. I'm expecting you to hit the nut with a hammer, right? Obviously, okay? And greetings from Torquay, I'm told by David. Is it Torquay or Torquay, David? Depending how posh you are. Good morning, everyone. So that's the question. What difference does it really make in life? The outcome seems to be the same. And the answer is, what we go back to is what we started with, is that in life, it's about doing the best that we possibly can. As long as we do the best we possibly can, nobody can ask anything more of us. But if there was an opportunity for us to do more, to be better, to accomplish more, then that is considered a missed opportunity. And the word chet, the word for sin, actually means missed opportunity. I want to share with you a little story. I'm going to be speaking about it this week, actually, for the Holocaust Educational Trust, around 200 children or teenagers. And the story goes like this. Yehuda Bauer, I think that was his name, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he was in Israel after the war, and he was a historian about the Holocaust, and he was fascinated, wrote many books, and he was considered a scholar and an expert. Anyways, he went back to Auschwitz immediately after the Holocaust, and he wanted to interview some of those Polish workers that had been around during the war. And he went to the railway. You know that there's a railway that goes all the way into Auschwitz. It was the portal. It was really the gateway for people to be transported. Without that railway, they never could have got into the camp. Initially, of course, the railway finished much earlier outside the camp, but then to speed things up, they changed it, and the railway went all the way in to the camp. So he met one of the railway workers, and lo and behold, he found out that this railway worker had actually been operating as a signal worker during the Holocaust. And he said to him, "Tell me something. What did you do during the war?" You know, it's the question I think that we all at some point in our lives, certainly earlier on, 20, 30 years ago, I remember even as a young, as a young, 12-year-old, 11-year-old. And I remember having this question when I went to Europe, and you saw Germans, and you saw older Germans, and, it was a question, the burning question always that you wanted to ask was, well, where were you? What were you doing during the war? And the answer, if ever you did have those conversations, was that, that they were nowhere near it. They were nowhere near that particular, the camps or anything like it. But he asked this railway worker, the signal worker, and he responded, "I was only the signal worker. My job was to just make the signals that were passed to the guard tower where the SS guards stood. So I signaled green or red for the trains to come in and to go out." So Yehuda Bauer became very, very angry when he heard this, that the signal worker had said, "You are only the signal worker." And he said to him, he got very excited, and he said, this historian said, "You are only the signal worker who changed the lights so that the trains would know whether it was red or green, whether they should come in or out of Auschwitz?" And what do you think the SS guard would say if I asked him? He would say that he was only the guard that signaled to those on the platform to get ready for the train that was about to come in. And those on the platform would say that their job was merely to help those off the train, right? The SS guard would open the doors of the train and then would push the people off the train. And then Mengele would come with a bunch of so-called doctors and experts, and they would just examine everyone and all their job was only to put them in lines, 2 different lines. And then you had the next group, and their job was to sort through the possessions, and that was only their job, to make sure that people were prepared. And then the next job was that they would only push the people into the gas chambers. And then the final job of the guard on top of the roof was that he would pour in the Zyklon B, and therefore his job was only to pour in the killing chemical. You are only a signal worker, said Yehuda Bauer to this railway worker. That's true. You couldn't have stopped the Holocaust, but you could have stopped one train. Just changing that one light from green to red or red to green at the end of the war, and when the Hungarian Jewry were still alive and they were being every day, thousands of them were being transported, you could have saved by delaying that train. It would have taken longer for it to get to Hungary and then come back. One train delayed would have saved 1,700 people's lives. Couldn't have stopped the Holocaust, but could have stopped one train. Only a railway worker? We all have a responsibility. Moshe Rabbeinu, let's return. He was meant to speak to the rock, and he hit the rock. It's true that the outcome seems more or less the same, right? The outcome in many aspects of life is the same. But if we look more closely, we see a missed opportunity. Speaking to the rock would have been a greater manifestation, a greater spotlight of God's manifestation, of the sanctifying God's name in this world, right? And therefore, it would have made a difference. If only Moshe had spoken, it would have made a greater Kiddush Hashem. And therefore, that is all, friends, that we are going to be asked of ourselves in life. Moshe missed out on entering into the land of Israel. It was a missed opportunity because of his missed opportunity. And that's what we have to recognize. Life is all about opportunities. And if we are willing to give of ourselves totally into all areas of life, then we will be able to demonstrate and to show that we are fulfilling our potential to the max. And therefore, we will see greater opportunities in life and afterlife. So I think it's a very timely lesson from Moshe. And it's, of course, this is just one aspect. It's a very complicated issue surrounding Moshe and hitting the rock. But this is one aspect. One aspect was that it did make a difference. It was subtle. It may not be discernible to the naked eye at first glance, but it does make a difference. Everything in life makes a difference. A signal worker delaying his response makes a difference. A smile makes a difference. A hug makes a difference. A kind word makes a difference. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and with this we'll conclude. At the time of his funeral, he was known for his outstanding, refined character. And at the time of his funeral, when hundreds of thousands of Jews, and predominantly very religious Jews with black jackets and black hats, were all marching behind the coffin, distraught at his funeral, there was a nun that decided to also walk behind. And one of the students, said, she definitely didn't learn in our yeshiva. He of course had the gall to go up to her and ask her, listen, you look very upset. Do you know what we're doing here? Why are you standing in a procession, a funeral procession for the great Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky? You didn't learn in our yeshiva and you're not Jewish. And she said something outstanding. You know what she said, friends? She said, I didn't learn in yeshiva and I'm not Jewish. But you know what? I sat collecting alms in the town square every day. And some of the best people in the town ignored me. Some of them even spat at me. Some of them cursed me. But one old man walked past every day and gave me a smile, gave me the time of day and said good morning. And that was Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. And that's why I'm walking behind. Friends, do we understand what we're doing? With a smile, with a kind word, we're literally building worlds. So let's get on with it today. Let's build worlds. Let's create a better future. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Memorial prayer. Adon Olamim Zocho Es Nishmas Ami Bas Aryeh Ho Kazimir Yom Yochia Ben Moshe Eliezer Shlomo Yechiel Ben Moshe Eliezer Ben Zion Ben Yitzchak Aryeh Ben Shimon Leah Bas Faiva Avram Mordechai Ben Moshe Katna Shalachu Li Olamam Anabal Rachamim Tatrein V'Seisek Anavav Li Olamim V'Titzrov V'Sachais Nishasam Adonai Enach Lasam V'Yanuchu B'Shlom Shkavam V'Namar Amen. Long life wishes to all. We end with a Refuah Shlema prayer. Lovely to see you, Alan, looking so well. David, looking suntanned in Torquay. Estelle, lovely to see you. Can't see the flowers today. Caroline, Carol, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you. This is such an important idea. I hope you appreciate it. Let's do the Refuah Shlema prayer. And if you didn't hear Arlette, it was all about plants, flowers, and trying to make something out of the Rabbi's Garden. You'll hear it on CHukat TV, YouTube. Watch it, not to be missed. מי שברך אבותינו רבי יצחק ויעקב משה אהרן דוד ושלמה יברך רב פסח חיילים בעבור שנים בספלים בעבורם פסח חזק הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם לחם ולפוסם וישלח להם רפואה שלמה שמיים לכל אוהביהם בסוף שח ישראל רפואה הנפש ורפואה הגוף. Hashtag Mark Ribbon Amar. Amen. Take care, everyone. Keep safe, keep well, look after yourselves. So nice to see you all. We'll see you tomorrow, please.